My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Thursday, July 9th, 2015, and we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, interviewing Dan Winders. Dan is joining us as part of the Cowboys in Every County Oral History Project. Thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate it. I'm honored to get to do this.
Well, Dan, let's begin by learning a little bit more about you. Could you tell me the year you were born and where you were born?
Yes, I was born in 1958 right here in Tulsa County.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your parents.
My parents are both from Tulsa also. I believe they were both born in Tulsa County, but basically both grew up here in the Tulsa area. Both attended Edison High School. My dad is, and always has been, an entrepreneur. He's been in so many facets of business and real estate and retail he did spend some time working for North American Rockwell back in the 60s when the space program was booming. He was a quality control engineer for North American Rockwell, which was really a big deal in Tulsa during the 60s space race. My mother worked most of her life for Ford Motor Credit in their corporate office, and then my parents actually split when I was very, very young, and so she and her husband had their own company later in life that was called Ameristar, that did industrial packaging supplies, and they sold that and they've retired. My dad is still working, and right now he's a landman, contract landman, so he's still going.
Well, tell me a little bit about your early life growing up in Tulsa.
Well, like I just alluded to, my parents split when I was very, very young. I had a brother and I, and there was my parents were teenagers when we were born. My mother had not graduated from high school yet, and so kind of kids having kids back in those days, and I went to live with my grandparents after my parents split, and my brother actually went to a foster home, Johnny and Esther Custer, great people, and there was an attempt to kind of get reunited. My dad married another woman, but we ended up living in the Tulsa Boys Home for a few years, not because we'd done anything bad, just because of our home situation. In the Boys Home, I will say, I made really good grades, and I actually became the spokesman at a really early age, and I used to do fundraisers for the Boys Home, like at Southern Hills and the Mayo Hotel. They would have charity dinners, and I would get up, they'd put me in a suit, and I would speak and raise money for the Boys Home in the second, third, fourth grade. So I am a businessman today, and people make fun of me and say, well, I got my training early in terms of raising money and giving speeches. So at a really early age, I was kind of the Shirley Temple of the Boys Home. So around the fifth grade, my dad remarried, and we actually moved in with my stepmother and dad, who was Ann Pellegrino, and my dad is Bill Winders, and my brother and I, we had a family kind of from the fifth grade on through high school, and I attended Edison High School, and my brother also, Steve Winders, who's now a police officer. And so that was kind of my early kind of getting from birth to high school very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Any memories stand out from your time in the Boys Home outside of being their spokesman?
Oh, yeah. I think it was, even though it was hard. You know, we had chores and things that we did. We learned a lot of early discipline living in the Boys Home in terms of getting up and doing chores and learning how to negotiate and be in social situations with new people coming and going. I had some boys that were really good buddies of mine that we were really close. We played softball, jumped on trampolines. I got exposed to boxing. I would never want to do that, as my profession. But so I mean, yeah, we had a lot of good times, and I think I learned to appreciate camaraderie and social flexibility, and so yeah, those were some things that stood out.
Mm-hmm. Would you have interaction with your parents or grandparents during that time?
Would see them. Typically, they would come see us on the weekends, or we would go home on the weekends. So we'd miss some weekends, but for the most part, we were there during the week to go to school, and then many weekends we would go home and do things at home.
Okay.
So it was a hard time. I don't want to paint it as a joyous picture. It's tough to go through as a kid.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
But even though it was a learning experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, when your family was reunited, you're going to high school.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your early activities that you were really drawn to during that time?
Well, in high school, I was a wrestler. So I started wrestling in about the 5th grade. I was never that good. I sure was not of a talent level to be for OSU to come looking for me, I can tell you that. But it was really important to my development and athletics and team building experience. And I had some great coaches, Ernie Jones and Ray Nunley, who were really good wrestling coaches and really good with boys. And so wrestling was a really enjoyable part of my kind of growing up in junior high and high school. Music was a big part of that. Good old 70s Eagles and all of the good 70s music that's still on the radio to this day. I had some really close friends, Booth Taylor, Charlie Doty, Blake Rhodes, Zach Davis, Kirby Hunt, that were kind of a Stand By Me, the movie Stand By Me, kind of a Stand By Me group of guys that I still talk to this day, still friends with them, and still talk to them this day. So that was really important. And then another interesting part of my high school experience was working at a grocery store in town, Petty's Fine Foods. That was my high school job, and that's where I met a guy named Jim Corbett, who has actually recently passed away, who became my roommate in college, and is the reason that is really the catalyst in terms of why I picked Oklahoma State. Was my Petty's Fine Food co-worker and high school friend, Jim Corbett.
Well, while you were working at Petty's, what were some of your job duties?
I started out at Petty's as a sacker, we called them, and in those days you sacked the groceries. We did have a lot of elderly clientele at Petty's, and so we did a lot of carrying groceries out for big tips, and so that doesn't happen much today anymore, but almost everyone's groceries got carried out, or we offered to carry them out. And especially Christmas time, we made a lot of tips. And then I got promoted to assistant produce manager and learned how to make the strawberries look good, get the lettuce just right, pick out the bad stuff and keep the produce shiny, and so we could sell it for as much as possible. I kept that job even through college. I would come home a lot of weekends and work on Saturdays. They had great hours because they were only open on Saturdays 9 to 7 and closed Sundays. So I'd just come home and work 9 to 7 on Saturday, and you do that 4 times, 4 times a month. That gives you some walking around money, and since Oklahoma State's only an hour down the road from Tulsa, it made it really easy. But my time at Petty's, oddly enough, was really a fun part of my growing up. Really fond memories of that.
When you were working your way through high school, did you have aspirations to attend college?
No. Because of my family splits, and my mother was remarried, and my dad was remarried, and my brother and I kind of got shuffled a bit. really no one in my family had ever gone to college. I have to tell you, and I was a wrestler. My family we weren't sports fans. We didn't watch a lot of football. We used to watch the OU Nebraska game from time to time on Thanksgiving back in those days. But I really didn't know the difference between OSU and OU when I was in high school. When people said OU, I thought they were being lazy and leaving the S out. That's true. I didn't know that there was a Stillwater. And so one night, Jim Corbett and I were approaching being seniors, and he said, "Have you ever thought about going to college?" And I said, "Well, actually, I really haven't." And he said, "Well, my uncle, whose name is King Casey, is head of financial aids at OSU." And if you look that up, you'll find King Casey was, I don't know his exact title, but he was definitely kind of the head guy over financial aid at that time. Thinks he can get us some money to go to school if you're interested. And my response was, "Sure." So he said, "Well, we'll head up there next week." So we got in his car one evening, and I was exhausted, and I slept all the way there, and I woke up and I was in this city called Stillwater, and at a guy's house named King Casey. It was a really nice house, and he got us, put to bed and said we're going to get up early and head to the university. And we got up and had breakfast, and the next thing I know, I've got my first look at a college campus. Never seen a college campus. And he arranges for a tour, and we tour around, and we looked at dorms, and specifically Stout Hall had sinks in the room. And so Jim and I said, "Wow, if we had a sink in the room, we'd really be something compared to these other dorms. We'd have our own sink." We had acne, both of us, and we had to use scrub and all this stuff, and so we thought a private sink for a couple of guys with some acne was a better deal. I'm not exaggerating that. So we picked Stout Hall if we were going to get in this college, and I kind of hate kind of this being in the record, but it's just the truth. King had me fill out some paperwork. There were no online programs back in the 70s. This would have been in 1976. And said, "Hey, you need to take this home and have your parents take a look at this and give their information." And they wrote a note that said, "We don't think Dan is serious about education, and will not support him financially to go to college." So I took my paper back to King, because we made another trip back, and he looked at it and he said, "Well," he said, if you want to go, there's this deal called the Lou Wentz Foundation, and I think we can get you some money through the Lou Wentz Foundation, given this, to go to school." And so he did. He said, "Now you're going to have to pass that ACT test," and I made a 23, which back then was good enough. And I did make an effort. I went to a training class and got serious about taking the ACT test. And I didn't do so well in high school. I graduated from high school with a 2.7. I really wasn't very serious about education in high school. I was busy wrestling and listening to music and having fun, and I just didn't take school seriously. I loved Edison High School, which is where I went. It's where my dad went. It's where my mom went. I went. My daughter's there now, and I've got a son that went to Edison. So lots of Edison High School in our history. I took the ACT test, and I still have, when I got in the mail, an acceptance certificate. It was very official looking, had a great logo on it, and it said, "You have been accepted to Oklahoma State University." And I still have that to this day, and it was a big deal to me. So my roommate, Jim Corbett, and I moved into Stout Hall, only there was one catch. They had remodeled the basement of Stout Hall, and the basement were all brand new rooms, brand new carpet. Even the bathrooms were remodeled, and there weren't any sinks in those rooms. So we got in Stout Hall, but had to do our acne routine in public, in the bathroom. I've kind of lost track of the original question, but in terms of kind of my path to OSU, the general question, that's so Jim Corbett, Petty's Fine Foods, as fate would have it, it all worked out, and so I found myself enrolled and living in Stout Hall, and it was the best, probably one of the best feelings. I used to go to Willard Hall to eat in the basement, and I still remember just that feeling of getting up in the morning those first couple of weeks, and I thought, I'm a college student. I am a college student. I'm not even working, because I'd worked my whole life paper routes, and I'd washed dishes early, and I've been working. I wasn't even working. I was going to college, so it was really just a freeing, uplifting feeling that I had that I'll never forget. Those first few weeks of being a freshman at OSU, especially based on what I'd been through. So
Absolutely.
So that kind of gets you up to
You're at OSU.
I'm at OSU, yeah.
In the 70s.
Yes.
What was the environment on campus like?
Well, in the 70s, without social media and without the internet and without, only landlines, it was really a social place where people just got to know each other on face value, and who you hung around with was just more than likely who was really in your proximity. That was your networking. People you met in class, people that you met in the dorm. So I just remember it being just a very, easygoing, kind of carefree time. Certainly, there was no Vietnam War on. Mm-hmm. There was some issues with Iran and the Ayatollah Khomeini, and there were some protests going on. And I actually made the front page of the O'Colly, standing in front of a protest. I really didn't have anything to do with it. I was just standing there, and it made it look like I was just walking to class and stopped to look, and I got my picture in the paper. So there was no repercussions from it, but I was like, wait a minute, I was just walking to class. I just stopped for 1 second. So that was the only sort of turmoil I remember associated with that, was when Iran had some issues, and there were some students there and some protests. Honestly, I didn't even really understand it at the time. I just stopped and observed it, and remembered I saw 2 or 3 of those things, and thought about Vietnam, and mm-hmm. that might be, and what that was like. And that's really I wasn't a very political guy, so I just went on. But other than that, it was just Terry Miller was our, I think he was a Heisman candidate, and we had a decent football team, and I learned to love football, even though I'd never really been exposed to football much, except a few high school games. My roommate taught me how football worked, and I was like, oh man, this is a lot of fun. So, and then I think most importantly is I turned over a new leaf and made the Dean's Honor Roll every semester. I graduated with 3.6 in accounting, so I really knuckled down on my academics. I would leave football games at halftime if I thought I needed the study time. I really took seriously making those grades. Plus, I was paying for it, so no scholarships and not much parental help at all. So when it's your money and you're borrowing and you're running home on the weekends to work, I really took making grades very seriously, as did my roommate. So I really was focused on academics a lot. So I had great fun, loved football games, loved the campus. My buddies in the basement of Stout Hall, we just had more fun than you should have in college. We just, Nick Wareheim and Ken Ridings in particular, just were the most hilarious guys ever, and did crazy antics and stunts. Nothing that hurt anything, nothing that damaged public property, but just, pulling shenanigans all the time. And and then I moved to Wilhelm, and it was the same thing. We had 8th floor Wilhelm. One of my best friends from high school, Zach Davis, was on that floor, and we just had a great time. So I had great fun just with people and hanging out and laughing and going to games and the student union. But I was really focused on making grades, and I actually got to the point I was tutoring people in accounting classes because I just got accounting. I don't know why, but I just kind of got it, and so people would come to me and sit in my dorm room and answer questions. Now, my junior and senior year, my roommate and I got married, and we lived in married student housing together. So right next to each other. We met. We had girlfriends, and we'd been dating them for a couple of years, and we ended up getting married. And so,
while you were in college?
While I was in college, and moved to married student housing, and we continued to have a great time. And I walked to class. What a long walk, and still met up with people in student union. I got married, early, and so that was part of my experience too.
How did you meet your wife?
I knew her from high school. She was a Memorial High School graduate. We did not stay married. We had 2 kids, and in the late 80s, as a lot of kids from the 70s and 80s, divorce rates are about 50%. Nothing tragic or really bad. It just, we didn't stay married, and had 2 great sons, Josh and Jordan, and Jim and his wife. I think I mentioned Jim just recently passed away, but he and his wife are still married to this day, Sherry. So that's how life goes.
How did you choose accounting?
Well, being a guy that really didn't have a lot of family influence or experience with how to select a college major, I was enrolling, I don't remember where I was, but in an administrative office, and I was asked the question, what would you like to declare as a major? I hadn't thought about the answer to that question until I was asked the question. And there was a family that I was close to in town, the Davises, that owned a marketing and advertising company, and they had it was kind of like the Mad Men of Tulsa, and I thought, boy, that sure is a fun lifestyle. And I looked down the list and I saw marketing, and I said, I want to be a marketing major. Just because in an instant I connected it to someone's life that I knew, that I thought that would be fun to be in that business. And I looked down and so I said marketing. So I was actually enrolled as a marketing major my freshman first semester freshman. And of course, to be a marketing major, one of the requirements is accounting, principles of accounting. So I enrolled in principles of accounting my first semester, and the head of the accounting school was named Wilton Anderson, and he was my teacher, because even though he was the head of the accounting school, he would always teach at least one beginning accounting class, is what I was told, just to kind of stay close to the new students. So I had the head of the accounting department as my teacher, and all of a sudden, I don't know what it was, I just got accounting. It was just intuitive to me. I made A's on everything. I didn't really even understand what marketing was, and after about 4 weeks, I marched upstairs and said, I'd like to change my major. and they looked down, they said, well, yeah, anything you're enrolled in now is going to count, so sure. So they rechecked the box, and I became an accounting major because of my experience with Wilton Anderson as my teacher, and because I just got it. So, and I, like I said, later I ended up tutoring people. Would come to my dorm room and say, can you explain this stuff to me? And I still don't understand it. And I'm not an accountant today, we'll talk about that. But that's how I got to be an accounting major.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Wilton Anderson. Mm-hmm. Did you have any other interactions with him?
Yes, he actually was my counselor.
Okay.
My I think that's what you call it. Mm-hmm. It's been a few years, but my advisor. So Wilton Anderson was actually my advisor. I got assigned to him once again, serendipitously as my advisor. So yes, I met with him, but those were my only interactions with him, were as my advisor.
Okay.
And he saw my grades and was quite happy to have me in the accounting school. And another skill set that some of my teachers did recognize, even though I wasn't a real serious student as I grew up in junior high and high school, but I've always been somewhat of a writer. And so I do have a letter that when I took, after I'd taken a couple of composition classes, the head of the English department, I don't recall his name, tried to recruit me to change my major to be part of the English department because I just do have good writing skills. I don't have basketball skills. I don't have, there's a lot of skills I don't have, but I do have good writing skills to the point that they tried to also get me to, in my freshman year, change my major. So Wilton said, I don't think that'd be a good idea for you. And I said, okay, I'll stay here.
Now, were you hoping to graduate and go become an accountant?
I didn't. For all you current OSU students that don't have a plan, I didn't really have a plan. I wasn't even sure exactly what you would do with an accounting degree, but I did have, I was starting to pick up on that you could probably get a job, that it's a real specific kind of skill set, and that if you had an accounting degree, you could probably get a job. So that gave me a lot of hope and confidence, and so I didn't really have a plan. But then, you know, I mean, I was absorbing and learning and listening, and then by the time I was a junior, I think this is a really good story for historically. There was another important guy in the accounting department named Milton Ussery, and he wrote the cost accounting book that OSU used for years. And Milton Ussery, in a cost accounting class when I was junior, made an announcement to, I bet he told 1,000 students that there was an accounting internship at the city of Stillwater, and that, you know, an internship would really help a person get a job if they had an internship. I'd never heard of an internship. It seemed quickly intuitive to me that if you could get this accounting experience before you graduated, that indeed it would probably help you get a job. So I had a grandmother that I was really close to who did go to college, and she had been a school teacher in Marlow, and so she did understand this kind of part of getting prepared to get a job. And so she said, what you're going to need is a really good suit for this interview. So I went and she got me decked out with really at the time, it wasn't a cheesy 70s looking leisure suit. It was a pinstripe, pinpoint cotton shirt, silk tie. It would probably still look good today. It was a very timeless, really high quality suit. And I set up an interview with City of Stillwater, and Milton Ussery's son is Wayne Ussery. I didn't know, I don't think I knew it was his son, but you know, okay, so you're the professor's son, and I introduced myself, and he asked me what fraternity I was in, and I said, well, no, I'm just lucky to be here. I'm a kind of a Stout Hall Wilhelm guy. That's my fraternity. And he laughed, and he told me what fraternity he was in, and honestly I thought, boy, I'm not a fraternity guy. I'm probably not going to get this job. I bet some frat brother's probably going to get the job, but I did the best I could at the interview. Well, I got that internship. They must have announced that to 1,000 kids, and I got organized and went and signed up, and they chose me. So I had an internship at the City of Stillwater, accounting internship, my junior and senior year. Well, now going back to your question about what did I plan to do with this accounting degree, the auditors for the city, now I'm really getting into the professional side of my life. The auditors for the city at that time was what used to be called a Big 8 accounting firm. There were 8 big accounting firms in the world, and they were the silk stocking, kind of the Ivy League of accounting firms. And Deloitte Haskins and Sells was one of those 8 accounting firms, and that firm was auditing the city. Well, because I was an accounting intern, I got to do a lot of the stuff to help the auditors, and I got to know the auditors. So quickly, my goal became, as an accounting major at OSU, to get to go to work for Deloitte Haskins and Sells, which I did. That was my first job out of college. So I did develop a plan. Getting the internship that I learned about through my Costa County class, that was all instrumental in developing that plan. But it all started to become pretty clear to me that I needed to get into one of these public accounting firms.
So graduation time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember much about the day?
Yes. Back at Married Student Housing, I remember being in my cap and gown. My grandparents, who, if you remember, I went to live with them, they had always been a real consistent part of my life. And my dad was there, and they took pictures, and I have pictures of that day, standing in Married Student Housing with my cap and gown on, with my grandparents around me, and my dad, and making our way to the Saratine Center. At the time was where graduation was held for the business college. And so, yes, I remember, getting dressed up, pictures taken, making my way, going across the stage, and then that's all I remember. I don't know what we did afterwards, but I just, yes, I remember that day, and it was a great day, and it was a huge day for my grandparents because they'd been there and supported me through all these years getting to that point. So. And my grandmother, I gotta give her a plug. She, now this was the 70s, but she would send me a $5 check and a little note in the mail every week.
Wow.
Every week. $5, check, little note. And so you cannot believe what $5 in the 70s, that was probably like getting $20 today. It's probably like $20, like getting a $20 bill in the dorm room. I mean, that's you can do a lot with $20 a week. So I don't know. Even if it was equal to $10, it still was a little. So she'd sent me that $5 a week and got me the suit. So she deserved to be there for graduation. It was real sweet, and so it was a great day, and I did it right on time. 4 years in and 4 years out, and a little student loan payment to go with it, but not too bad. So.
Did you already line up your job before graduation?
Yeah. So I did go through the interview process. OSU was really good about bringing companies on campus, and I interviewed with City Service Company, and I interviewed with Touche Ross, which was another firm, and Phillips Petroleum, and so I did other interviews on campus, but I'd gotten to know the Deloitte people. There were specifically Bob Mogilnicki and another OSU alumni, John Smith, liked me and helped sponsor me and get me into Deloitte Haskins & Sells. So it was kind of a no-brainer that I had this 2 years of audit experience as an intern, and that I could join them and be part of the audit team. And I did. I came back for the next 2 years and actually was on the City of Stillwater audit team. So yes, that just made all the sense in the world to me, and I was really thankful to have that connection.
Well, kind of take me through your career.
Okay.
Because you're in a different place today.
Yeah. I guess kind of hold on to your seat. This isn't going to make sense to you, but it's been a very, this isn't the story of my life because my life's not over yet, I hope. But to date. So I got that first job with Deloitte Haskins & Sells, and I was an auditor for 2 years and studied for the CPA exam and passed the CPA exam while working for Deloitte Haskins & Sells. And you're under some pressure to do that, to get with it, and let's get the CPA exam studying done and get that under your belt so that you can be a public accountant. So I passed the CPA exam. I did that for 2 years. And then Wayne Ussery, the guy that hired me, who was the director of finance for the City of Stillwater, who hired me as an intern, left to take a job in Grapevine, Texas, either Grand Prairie or Grapevine, as the director of finance down in Texas, which left the director of finance spot open. Now, I'm 23 years old, but I got approached to become the finance director for the city of Stillwater at 23 years old. I went and interviewed with the city council. The mayor was a pretty famous mayor. Her name was Christine Salmon. She was the mayor, and I sat in the council chamber and had all the councilors talking to me. The city manager then was a guy named Larry Gish, and he ended up being a state, I think, House Representatives later. But Larry Gish brought me in and said, "We think Dan's a good candidate. He's had 2 years as an intern, knows our accounting system. He's 2 years as an auditor, so he's got 4 years experience with the city." And they interviewed me and they hired me. And I became the director of finance for the city of Stillwater. I had about 30 employees. I was also the city clerk legally. I was over municipal court, utility billing, all accounting. I think that's enough. I think that was it. And I had all these people reporting to me, and I looked like I was 12. You can't tell from the interview, but I'm only about 5'6", and I weighed quite a bit less back then, and I just looked like they hired me, and I did a good job. I was on city council meetings every Tuesday night. I did budgets. I helped with revenue bond and general obligation bond issues to finance city infrastructure improvements. I was responsible. Wayne Ussery started it, but I ended up getting the financial statements so that we got the first financial statement of conformance award for financial reporting in the state of Oklahoma, which was a big deal issued by the Government Finance Officers Association of America. You had to have your financial statements audited and statistics about the city and history and as a big packet. And so we became the first city to get that financial reporting award. And so I had a really great and successful career at a really early age and got a lot of management experience. And the other thing that I did was the city really didn't have a lot of computer systems, and so I did a software search, and the term used to be I automated the city. We went on our general ledger used to be a big book, and so we put all that online. We had some automation for utility billing back then, but everything else was manual. So for the most part, during my tenure there, I brought in automation to city accounting records. Well, because of that, another Big 12 accounting firm, which was Coopers & Lybrand, had started auditing the city, and they wanted me to become a municipal government consultant for them, and so they hired me away from the city. And I mentioned that I did get a divorce early in life, and so that was going on, and so I moved to Tulsa and took a job with Coopers & Lybrand as a consultant, primarily, not completely, but primarily working with other city governments now in how to improve their operations and how to improve their use of automation in the city government. So, and then I ended up working a lot on police and fire records. That kind of jumped over into police and fire record systems. Well, I ended up doing more work in police and fire record systems than in municipal accounting, and I became somewhat of a recognized national expert in automated fingerprint systems, police record systems. I did some public speaking on how to implement that, and I got a job with the city of Oklahoma City as a consultant because they did a bond issue to upgrade all of the city police and fire, and they were building a new jail and 911 systems, and consulting fees are pretty expensive. I became good friends with the assistant police chief, Dave McBride, and he said, "I think we just need to hire you, and you can go back to work for them later, but we need you, we can't afford to, as a city government, to pay all these big consulting fees. So I went to work for the city of Oklahoma City as the director of public safety information for the police and fire department, and my office was right next to the chief of police office with the assistant chief, and we implemented a multi-million-dollar upgrade of all of the case tracking records, the investigation capability, kind of like you see on television. We could put, if we just had one little clue, like a butterfly tattoo on a hand, we could put that in the system and it would give us anything that we ever knew about a butterfly tattoo and who that might be and who they were associated with. It was a really sophisticated system. So we successfully implemented that. Then I went back to Coopers and Lybrand. So now I really was recognized as a public safety system specialist. Worked on other Columbus Police Department, Tallahassee, Florida Police Department, helping them do all those kinds of things. And then kept getting requests to do business planning. So a good friend who's now my business partner here at my company now, which is Blueview, his name's Bryant Bynum. He was at Coopers and Lybrand with me. We started doing these business plans together, and we did the business planning for, as an example, where Hard Rock Casino is. There was Cherokee Chief Wilma Mankiller, she's real famous. We worked for Wilma Mankiller on multiple projects doing business plans before there was even a bingo hall in Oklahoma. My partner Bryant Bynum and I did business planning for Wilma for what is now the Hard Rock Casino when it was just dirt, and some other places, and some hotels and some other Cherokee industry kinds of projects. And we got into more business planning and forecasting, and I kind of moved away from the municipal and public information and got into that. Well, during that time there was a recession had hit, the oil bust of the 80s, and kind of changed the economy of Oklahoma, and so Coopers and Lybrand Tulsa was doing some downsizing and moving people around. They wanted me to move to San Francisco. Well, you can tell by this accent, I'm an Oklahoma guy, and I just wasn't a West Coast guy, and so I had been working for Liberty Bank doing some systems planning work for them, and they hired me as a head of strategic systems planning for Liberty Bank. So I jumped into banking, but doing the same sort of things I'd been doing in government and business planning, and I got hired into the bank to work between IT, information technology, and the business units like mortgage and trust and international banking and retail banking, so I could kind of bring together what was going on with technology with different banking departments. And I did that for about a year when I got a call, a life-changing call from my old boss at Coopers and Lybrand. His name was Jerry Parker from Tulsa. And he had joined a group out of McLean, Virginia called BDM Technologies that was opening a Denver office in technology consulting. And he said he thought it was a really good opportunity. Now, Denver appealed to me. Skiing appealed to me. Mountains appealed to me. I had met my current wife now, Claudine Winders, and we had actually just gotten married, and I've been married to her now for 22 years. So we got married and moved to Denver, and I went to work in Colorado to help develop a Denver BDM Technologies office. BDM Technologies was about a $500 million company. Actually started in New Mexico, but headquartered in Virginia. They started this Denver office because there was this new thing called the internet that was developing. And there was a browser called Mosaic. It was a governmental browser. It was the only browser. And there was actually an alphabetical listing of websites. I believe the site was called commercenet.net. And here's all the websites for companies that start with A and blue hyperlinks on a gray background. And they handed me a group of people. I had an MIT graduate that worked for me in my group. I had a Cornell University graduate in my group, 2 top Colorado University MIS majors, Chris Maldone and Todd McGuire. The other 2 were Tharoon Reddy and Michael. And the 5 of us got involved in the web when it was really early, and US West Communications approached us about the need for internal corporate communications. And so my group of smart guys and I thought about using a browser, and we really developed one of the first large-scale intranets. It made Inc. magazine. We had a demonstration project called the Global Village where we demonstrated how this would all work. And we took it even further than that within US West Telecommunications, and actually started developing websites and intranet sites and pulling legacy system data into web browsers. And then from there developed some of and then Netscape hit the scene, which was the first public browser. I actually went to Netscape and met the Netscape people. And my team and I, all those people I mentioned, we started developing some of the first leading strategic level websites. We got some Best of Net awards and had some creative people, great programmers, and worked with Disney on some first Disney's edutainment concepts. I mean, this was all really new stuff. Mm-hmm. And the 2 browsers were Mosaic and Netscape. It was haven't talked about years much, but this would have been 1993, 4, 5, and the web really started in 92 publicly. So I really became an internet guy through this transformation. I've long since quit doing, I'm still really good at accounting, I still get it, but long since quit doing accounting work. And another thing I haven't told you about the dimension of my personality is going back to my sophomore year at OSU, I developed a love of the banjo and bluegrass, and I drove my roommate crazy, and I became a banjo player, and I actually got some awards for banjo competitions. And
did you pick it up at OSU?
I did. In my dorm room. That little newspaper. I found a $100 banjo, and in a little newspaper at Stillwater, and I went and bought this $100 banjo, and I got a book, and I just started learning to play the banjo, and I went banjo crazy. I almost hurt my grades because I spent so much time learning to play the banjo.
You just teach yourself?
Yeah, I took some lessons later, 4 or 5 years later, from a guy in Tulsa named Robbie, who's still in the banjo business here in Tulsa. And I played in a traveling family bluegrass group on the weekends for a little while. When I was at Deloitte, Haskins and Sells, I would leave on Friday and get in a van and go travel around and play at different places around Arkansas and Oklahoma. So I played banjo. I'm getting somewhere with this. And then when I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan in the 80s, I kind of put the banjo down and picked up blues guitar and took lessons from a guy named Mike Bruce in Tulsa who used to play for Bob Seger, and he really taught me how to play blues guitar. I'm not great, but I've had a band ever since. I still have a band, and I still play. I had this creative side. So all of a sudden, now we're back to Denver. The internet's new. We're developing band sites, and I kind of discovered my creative side, which had kind of always been there in music. And all of a sudden, going back to that marketing thing, I all of a sudden found myself morphing into a branding and marketing guy, because I wasn't a programmer. I never have been a programmer. I was always more, what's the objective? What's the strategy? What's the benefit that we're going to get from the spending on technology? How do we implement it? How do we change processes? How do we change the culture so the culture accepts the technology? All that kind of stuff. And now with the web and being creative and getting things pushed out so that people would click on sites, I started discovering, well, maybe I am a marketing guy. Maybe that was the right major after all. And so I started developing my ability to help think about and talk about communications and marketing and messaging and users and how you target users and the whole marketing approach that is really important part of the internet and was early on. Well, while I was at BDM, they went public. Went from a $500 million company to a $1 billion company, and I'd been buying employee stock all along. I was really homesick, even though Denver was great, and my wife and I had a great time skiing, and my boys came up to Denver all the time, and we went hiking, and we had a great time in Denver, and it really expanded my horizons. I took the money that I made from the company going public and came back to Tulsa and started from scratch with a guy named Colin Lee and Trey Orta. And Trey didn't participate a long time, but with those two guys, we started a company in Tulsa called Halo Enterprises, Inc. And it was a website company for all practical purposes. We went in business in Tulsa, we pooled our money together, we lived cheap, and we bootstrapped an early in mid-96, a Tulsa website company called Halo Technologies was what we called it. We ended up raising money, going back to my boys' home days. I ended up raising a couple $1 million from investors, and we bought another agency called Fire Ant. We liked their name better, but we were always legally Halo Enterprises. We bought Fire Ant Technology, incorporated their operations, and now we had this merger of marketing and web, an early version of how you merge marketing and web, and it was known by the marketplace as Fire Ant Technology and Communications. We sold that company in a transaction in 1999 for $22 million, $10 million in cash, and $10 million in stock in 1999, December 5th, I think, was our close date. And I did okay in that transaction. I had a lot of investors that made more money than I did, but I had a great experience. My bank account was better. I'll talk about that in a minute. But so that was really a successful venture. We sold our company to a company out of Boulder, Colorado called XOR, and they took over the company, and I had a 5-year non-compete. And I tried to work for them for a couple of years, and I wasn't crazy about that because by this time I'd really developed an entrepreneurial bit to my personality, and working for the other guys was kind of tough for me. So I only stayed there a couple of years. Well, unfortunately, the dot-com bust of 2000 happened, and so the stock that I had in that company, the value of that stock went away. They really, like everyone else, everything was overvalued, and they paid too much. And so the company went on. It was bought and sold several times, and so I went on, and I had to, but they were still in business, so I had a non-compete. Well, I got into the retail world, into something I didn't know anything about. It was called Action Industries, Inc., and I bought a small store, and developed a small chain of truck accessories around work trucks, toolboxes, and hitches. And I wanted to be, it wasn't so much about the product, I wanted to try my hand at retail. I'd always been an accountant and a professional services guy. Well, it didn't go so well for me. I lost a lot of money trying my hand in retail. And when my non-compete was over, I got back into what I'm good at, which is marketing and branding and website development and digital marketing. And so, which brings us up to today, which is I have Blueview with my partner Bryant Bynum, who is the guy that I used to do the projects with back for Wilma Mankiller. He's my partner in this company today. He's got an MBA from OSU. We've been friends and partners now for 25 plus years, and we're 10 years in business as Blueview, and I love coming to work. I love what Blueview does. I'm a branding, marketing, web, digital marketing, but I'm pretty darn good at measuring analytics and numbers and return on investment as it relates to marketing, because deep inside me, there's still an accountant in there. So that's kind of my career. I cannot tell you how exciting that's been. Were it not for Oklahoma State University and having that college degree and having the great positive, believing the world was my oyster as I graduated, I wouldn't have had this rich, exciting life. And prior to the interview, anything that I've had, money that I've lost, things that haven't gone right, have not been bad luck, or just, I've just been a risk taker, and some things have worked and some things haven't, but most things have worked. So from that standpoint, it's been good.
What a very interesting circle of events.
It is a very interesting circle of events, yes. I couldn't make that up if I tried. And it's like a jigsaw, it's like buying a jigsaw puzzle that you say, wait a minute, there's 4 different puzzles in here. How am I supposed to make a jigsaw puzzle out of this? But you just do. So that's my career story. And OSU, so when I go back to the OSU campus and just walk around on campus, I just absorb what that 4 years enabled as far as my ability to strike out and live and die by my own sword. And had it not been for those 4 years invested at OSU, wouldn't have happened for me. I know there are stories of people with an 8th grade education that ended up being millionaires. I know that, but for my story, without Oklahoma State University, I wouldn't have been prepared for I wouldn't have had any of these opportunities. So,
has your time at OSU impacted your Tulsa community in any way?
I would say yes, in this sense. Tulsa is I don't have the statistics, but compared to Oklahoma City, there are a lot of OSU graduates in Tulsa. And I think what really impacts it is that there's so much camaraderie and familiarity in the business world. You always end up sharing, who's your alma mater, who do you root for, TU, OU, OSU, are you from out of state? And so it has impacted me that I have a long list, even though I didn't go to college with them, I have a long list of current friends, business associates that are all OSU alumni. Dr. Raj Basu, that's at OSU Tulsa, is one of my very best friends, and is always, helping me meet people and inviting me to things. And Mark Faro is another one of my, he's a big OSU alumni, donor, bleeds orange, and it's just the camaraderie of the people that I meet and know from OSU, and the transferability of understanding each other and the experience that we had going to OSU. I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's really, the satisfaction I feel is, and I have great OU friends, and we hire a lot of TU people here at OSU, and those are great schools too. But as I meet people, I just enjoy the camaraderie of all of the OSU alumni that I meet and work with to this day that live around Tulsa. It's just a little extra special feeling, I guess I would say.
Do you feel that OSU alumni have a different feeling towards the university in terms of loyalty?
I believe that kind of like coffee shops, coffee shops all have different personalities. They all have good coffee. They all have, different, varying degrees of good experience, and I think universities are like that. So, as it relates to drawing a parallel between coffee shops and universities, OSU is continues to this day, and I think the alumni feel that there's just kind of a special friendly spark and aura that surrounds OSU, of being an OSU graduate, that it's just it's still a super friendly, accepting, it's just not a snobby place. It's just a real, anyone from any walk of life, rich, poor, we don't care. If you're about the orange and the black, we're about you. And if I meet you and we didn't go to college together, it's just, I think that the alumni of OSU, my experience is there's just a deep held fondness for that, for that orange and that black and that association, and any icons that you can be a part of, to tell other people that you're part of it. I mean, I sense, there, for me and for all the people I know, just really deep loyalties surrounding OSU. I don't know, I'm sure it's that way with other colleges, but I feel it's really special and unique at OSU. I do.
Tell me a little bit about your children.
Okay, I'm very proud of my children. I have a 32-year-old son who went to OU. He got an advertising degree. He's a great family man. He went to work at CarMax. Well, first he went to work for Enterprise and quickly became a manager at Enterprise, managed 2 stores in Enterprise. So he rose to management ranks quickly. Then he moved to CarMax and became a manager, a car buyer. Nothing wrong, he's never sold cars. He's always been in kind of the executive management side, decision-making side, and worked at CarMax. And then he got hired by the Nelson Nissan Mazda Auto Group, and he's an executive at that company over large parts of their operation, making decisions on inventory and conditioning and warranties, and just he makes very high level executive decisions, and is a part of their top level executive team. And they own properties between Kansas and Oklahoma and Tennessee, so he's part of the executive team there. So he's a really successful, sharp guy, has the same haircut as I do. My other son his name is Jordan, and he's 32. He actually, I got to get ages right. My gosh, like 32 and 34. He's 32. They have these birthdays and move around on me. I can't believe they're getting that old. But he just graduated from OSU in May with an aviation management degree. And he went to OSU for a couple of years. Unlike me, he wasn't quite as serious about his academics. He went to OSU, had a great experience, lived in Wilhelm, but opted to go to the Navy for 5 years. And he was in the Navy for 5 years, served in the Navy. He's still in the National Guard, and he's going to do his 20 years, but went to OSU, Navy paid for that, got his aviation management degree. He had experience working on F-16s in the Navy, so now he's got the actual hands-on mechanical experience in the Navy aircraft area. And now he works for Omni Air International, and he's a manager over safety for internationally chartered flights. He's a manager in their safety area. So his career, and he got an internship. He was an intern there first, and they've hired him full time. So his aviation management career is off to full swing. So both of them are just, they're off my payroll and doing great. And then I have a 17-year-old daughter, Sarah, who is getting ready to be a senior at my other alma mater, Edison High School, which I'm also very, very fond of. Sometimes I don't know whether to wear green or orange, but she is also planning to go to OSU in the fall, and her interest is in music business. So she's kind of figuring out what that looks like, and going to be talking to some advisors and figuring out how she helps develop that career through Oklahoma State. So got 3 great kids. Just couldn't be prouder.
Well, I will say that you do mention that you live your life your business, social media, and I'm pretty sure I came across your Twitter account.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want you to tell me the name of your dog.
Oh, our dog is Roxy. Oh, no, my son's dog is T-Boone Pickens. Is that the one that you
I don't
saw?
know. I saw some interesting dog names, so I wasn't sure. Did you
No.
have a Iba?
And then we have a dog named Iva. Yeah.
Okay.
So my son Jordan that just graduated from OSU has a chocolate lab, T-Boone Pickens, with his own website. And he takes pictures of just the dog at the stadium, different locations, watching football. So the dog, T-Boone Pickens, I'm surprised he hasn't been contacted for any kind of copyright infringement, but he has a dog, and we just call the dog Boone. And then he has and then on the other scale, he has and he's married to Katie, who's also an OSU fan. And so he and Katie have Iba, and Iba is a little mixed dachshund, and so they have T-Boone Pickens and Iba, and they're quite active in and out of my Twitter account, and so yes, those are dogs, not people. But shows how deep our roots run and how excited we are that we name our dogs such names.
Well, I was wondering if there was a little bit of a connection there. You know, one could only assume.
And historically, I have to give a plug to my other daughter-in-law, Sarah, and have two grandkids now, Everett Allen, and a granddaughter, Sarah, that are a little boy and a little girl. They're super cute, so I wouldn't want them to be left out of this. But so I am a grandfather now. I know I look 23, but I'm a grandfather now. So.
Well, as we wind down, I know, I think before we turned on our recorders today, you mentioned a little something about your roommate. I know you've spoken about
Yes.
your roommate, and could you just share a little bit about your roommate for us?
Yeah, my roommate was Jim Corbett. In college, he was Jimmy. When he got older, he became Jim. But and he's the one that I worked with, Petty's, that just said, "Hey, have you thought about going to college?" And he actually helped me get in college. And I want to tell, very quickly, when Jim graduated from college with his accounting degree, and he had not had an internship, he had a hard time finding a job. And he was actually working at a convenience store with an accounting degree from OSU called Get and Go, which was kind of like a quick trip, and was having trouble finding a job. Well, if you remember, I started at the city of Stillwater actually about 18 months after I got out of college. So I did that stint with Deloitte, audited the city for a couple of years, and then went to work for the city. And there was an airport accountant job open, and my friend that I still talk to and know, Pete Van Pelt, was the Stillwater Airport director, and he had an airport accountant job open. Didn't pay much, but I called my old roommate, friend Jim, that was responsible for getting me to college. I thought, well, this is my chance to do something and help him get his first job. So I was glad to get that opportunity. He had done so much for me, and connected him with Pete, and he became the airport accountant for the Stillwater Municipal Airport. He then became the internal auditor for the city. And he stayed at the city for 4 or 5 years at the city of Stillwater. And then he got hired as an accountant for Glendale, Arizona. And he went there for a couple of years. He was homesick, and the city of Moore, Oklahoma hired him as the finance director for the city of Moore, Oklahoma. And he stayed there for 26 and a half years. As the finance director for City of Moore, he stayed in city government. So he kind of helped me get a college degree, and I feel like I helped him get started in his career. And unfortunately, on July 4th, I got a call from his brother. It was very sad that at 56 years old, he dropped dead of a sudden heart attack. Woke up at 5 in the morning with chest pains, told his wife that he needed help. And they rushed him to the hospital. They even did an emergency open heart surgery, and about 2.5 hours later, so he was gone. So I'm a pallbearer in his funeral tomorrow. So, sometimes stories come around full circle, and it's, and that's a sad full circle for me. I'm gonna control myself. I've shed tears over that. He was really an important part of my life. He's a good guy. So.
Well, we've kind of did a very quick fast forward through your life so far.
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to mention? Anything we left out?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I've hit all the major high points. You know, I've got my wife Claudine and great kids and just a great. You know, I have gone to church most Sundays. I'd like to throw that in there. I think that's helped me. So I started out life probably a little perplexed as a kid in the boys' home, but it's all worked out. So, and OSU was a big part of that. So I'm very honored to get to be part of this record. I hope I've given enough information on the campus in Stillwater and what it was like, but as a child of the 70s, that was my experience.
Well, Dan, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.